Good morning everyone, welcome to another session of Live at the Waterhole on this peaceful Sunday morning slash soon to be afternoon. It's me, Kenneth Gamble. I'll be your guide for the session. A reminder to please send through your questions on the various social media channels or links. It's a live and interactive show, and it's just always a great dimension to open up some discussions and answer some questions. We've started today off at Tau Waterhole in the Madikwe Game Reserve. There is a large amount of Egyptian geese hanging around. I don't think we normally see this many at Tau, and of course joined by a few elephants, a single wildebeest in the background. But looks like quite a nice, stunning and peaceful day at Tau. The weather's a bit different down in the greater Kruger region. We had a very sunny day yesterday, but there's a bit of weather that's moved in. This weather in Tau certainly looks a lot more inviting. Mr. Elemental, welcome to the show. Good to have you here. I hope things are well on that side of the world, down under. Question from Benny: what would be your top waterhole sighting? Benny, I think certainly cats would be high on the list. I think I've had a bit of bad luck. We've always either missed them or just a bit unfortunate, but I would definitely maybe rank leopards and lions quite high. Maybe a bit typical, but that would be fantastic. My personal favorite would probably be a nice black rhino sighting. I would not mind that. Truly a peaceful scene today at Tau. Not even really a breath of wind. We can see a few ripples on the water there, but it actually looks quite still and quiet. The wildebeest are coming to quench their thirst. It's really funny seeing so many Egyptian geese. I don't recall ever seeing so many Egyptian geese, or jippos as we call them in South Africa. I think certainly closely behind the hardy-tailed ibis when it comes to monotonous, sometimes a little annoying calls. They can be quite noisy early in the morning, and it's not uncommon to, or they actually are quite common in suburbia. So also one of those childhood birds if you grew up in this part of the world. I have seen or heard of a few reports that Egyptian geese are actually now present in parts of Europe and England. It's a very interesting phenomenon. I think maybe they're due for a name change. Maybe Egyptian goose is no longer fitting. They can maybe call it the global goose. Well, we're going to keep meandering around. We'll probably come back to Tau a bit later, but we're off to Founder's Lodge. Well, it's looking a lot more peaceful compared to Friday when the wind was pumping here at Founder's Lodge. Got the ever-present Egyptian goose there, and a few peaceful zebras. I'm sure they've had a drink of water. There was a question from Milo, that's right, asking what's heavier, an elephant's brain or its heart. So Milo, an elephant's heart is heavier between the brain. Their heart, obviously it depends on the gender of the elephant and its age, all those different factors, but roughly an elephant's heart is between 12 to 20 kilograms, whereas a brain is about half the size of that, roughly around 5-6 kilograms. But at the same time, elephants have one of the largest brains of any land animal. So, not to be scoffed at, they've got quite a large brain, of course. And that developed or large brain of theirs is what enables them or allows for their complex range of emotions, their memories, and communication. As we know, they communicate through a variety of ways. And it's been said elephants from different regions tend to actually have their own dialects, also kind of similar to bird calls in a way. Hello to Anita from Bulawayo, Zimbabwe. I wonder how it's looking in that part of the world. And also from Joyce Brown from the Wet Lake District. Certainly is a wonderful start to a Sunday morning, especially the weather that we're having at the moment. So it's great to just sit back, enjoy some sunny weather and some nature with a cup of coffee or tea if that's your preference. I see we've got some blesbok that are coming in. They're always quite funny animals to watch. While they walk, it's as if they're nodding and shaking their head incessantly. Definitely a top contender for the Clown of the Bush award. A wildlife lady was asking, or she was saying she thought the Egyptian geese would be fighting more. It is certainly interesting. I must read up a bit on that, because you often generally have them competing quite aggressively for their waterholes, and there's always a dominant pair that tends to control a waterhole. In this case, we can see the pair here with their goslings at Founders Lodge. But I wonder what changes or switches in them that all of a sudden they're willing to congregate and share the space. That's quite interesting. I'll do a bit of reading on that one. I know a few times in Hoedspruit, Egyptian geese are so defensive of their water, even if different duck species sometimes approach, they will chase them out of the area. So they can be very possessive of their territories or their waterholes, water sources maybe. Well, as was foretold, we're going to hop back over to Tau Lodge. Most of the action's left from Founders Lodge for now. Certainly quite a bit of action going on at Tau today. Copious amounts of Egyptian geese. It's quite interesting, as much as they're congregating, there's certainly a level of territorialness, but yeah, it's interesting that they would tolerate each other so much. I'm still digging through my Robert's Bird book to see if I can find a bit more of a educated answer for the specific reason. So from what I can tell, there's a host of reasons. They tend to be non-aggressive towards each other outside of the breeding season, but I don't think that's the case right now, because I've seen young Egyptian geese in the area I stay in, and I mean, we just saw young Egyptian geese in the Founders Lodge. Obviously here at Tau there doesn't seem to be like as much breeding going on, but I can't think it's far off. But they tend to go through a molt, and they can't really fly very well, so it's during that time in which they congregate a bit. But I don't think that's our situation here. The breeding season is well on its way. It could just be down to abundant food and water resources. Obviously this part of the country in South Africa is quite dry at the moment, so Tau itself is quite abundant with grasses and food for them, and I'm sure the immediate area around has not got too much water at the moment, so that might be causing a large gathering in a way, just prior to the wet season starting to kick off. Lola was asking, how do elephants invent new words? So Lola, it's quite a complicated question or topic of research. I was reading about it the other day, so quite a lot of research has been done identifying certain sounds, etc., and obviously it will only get better as technology develops. Also the onset of AI, or the use of AI, will also probably enhance that type of research. But up to this point, I wouldn't say there's necessarily an elephant dictionary of words per se for humans, or we have words, and obviously, translating elephant communication into English is quite a broad topic and probably not straightforward. But the crux of it is there's a lot of different recorded phrases, etc., but now the work is to try figure out what they mean, etc., and correlate them to things. And that's kind of where things are at the moment. There's no specific meaning to certain things, but I think it will start to improve, or they will start to learn it. But yeah, it's quite a abstract task. I mean, elephants don't necessarily have words such as we do. I mean, a certain sound could indicate a whole range of things, or essentially one sound could mean a sentence for them. But yeah, it's a very, very interesting and deep rabbit hole that is starting to be, or that they're starting to explore more and more. Charles Chipambano from Malawi was asking why there are lots of Egyptian geese at the waterhole. So we're not the only ones that have noticed it. Charles, I believe the reason in this case is due to the abundant resources or here at Tau that's maybe attracting the Egyptian geese, and most of the area surrounding Madikwe and most of this part of the country is quite dry, so I think this is driving that congregation of these animals to a water source and a food resource. Most waterholes will have dried up by now, and there's not really necessarily fresh vegetation out there. So I think this congregation is also causing them to get together, and also a reduction in aggressiveness. It looks like there's a smaller water bird chasing the Egyptian geese there. That's quite interesting. I can't see too well what it is, but I assume it looks like a red-knobbed coots chasing the Egyptian geese. It's quite interesting, because Egyptian geese are known for their highly territorial and aggressive behavior, and now they're busy being chased off by coots. I'm not sure if the coots maybe have a chick, and that's what's driving them to be a bit more assertive. Let's see, this elephant's come to the water with a lot of excitement. could not wait to have a drink of water. I see we have a springbok back there. It appears like it's licking the soil there, or the termite mound. I don't think it's grazing. It probably indicates it's trying to get some minerals or nutrients from the soil there. Quite interesting behavior to see. Patrick from Cape Town is asking if they have the Big Five at Madikwe Game Reserve and where it is situated. Patrick, so yeah, Madikwe Game Reserve is a Big Five game reserve. There's all the typical Big Five, but there's also cheetahs, hippos. Pretty much say it's got almost everything. But yeah, your typical Big Five are there. And the game reserve is located quite close to the Botswana border. It's in South Africa. The largest known big town nearby would be Gaborone, the capital city in Botswana. It's probably only about 80 kilometers or so away, maybe closer. And I think the closest South African town is Zeerust. It's not an area I'm super familiar with, but I have been in that part of the world. But yeah, it's located in the northwest of the country, and ironically enough in the northwest province, so that suits it well. Stephen also asking or saying it seems like it's been raining lately, that he's watching us from the rock in Kenya. It has started to rain. I've mainly been in the Lowveld the last while in the Kruger region, and the rain certainly have started. This week we had a fairly rainy week. The showers are still a bit scattered. I don't think it's necessarily been blanketed showers throughout the region. As far as I understood earlier in the week, there was quite decent rain in the central parts of the Kruger National Park, and I do know in other parts there has also been good rain. So at least the wet season is upon us. The bush can start to come back to life now. Ooh, this elephant's being a bit cheeky with these poor wildebeest. Just being a bully because he's big enough to be one. We've also got quite a bit of herons in the area. From what I can tell though, these are more than likely black-headed herons. There was one walking near the wildebeest, and that would be a black heron. A grey heron will always be near water. Could be due to the rains in the area. I'm not sure when last it rained in Madikwe, but if there's been a bit of a termite explosion, birds will definitely be capitalizing on it quite a bit. We had a bit of a termite flight last week, my vehicle's windscreen bore the brunt of that. It's one of those catch-22s where you try not to wipe the windscreen because then it's just dirtier. But it is nice to see all the wonderful things we associate with the new seasons in the bush starting to happen now.
I'm Ralph, and I'm taking you to Sibuya Game Reserve, which is one of the only game reserves in southern Africa accessed only by boat. We'll stay at the luxury forest camp overlooking the Kariga River with an abundance of bird life and animals grazing on the opposite bank. Luxury tented suites set in a riverine forest offers the perfect place for privacy and comfort. Join me on Sibuya and let's experience it together.
What does it take to handle the wild? Balance. Determination. Focus.
Yaku!
And gear that can take a beating so you don't have to.
The bush, full of beauty, wonder, and absolute chaos. And now, all that madness has its own show. It's called a Wild Bush Week. The countdown of the most outrageous, heart-stopping, and sometimes downright ridiculous wildlife moments of the week. Lions throwing their weight around. Hyenas gate-crashing the buffet. Leopards doing, well, leopardy things. Each week, it's a fresh reel of safari gold, a mix of drama,
She's just got an impala, everybody.
danger, and a healthy dose of laughter. So, if you fancy a highlight show with bite, and I don't mean just the animals, tune in to a Wild Bush Week. You bring the tea, and we'll bring the tusks, tails, and teeth.
And they're more your terrestrial herons that will walk around grasslands, etc., trying to catch insects and small mammals and reptiles or whatever they can actually fit down their throat. Almost like a modern day T-Rex stalking the grasslands. I have seen footage of them catching rats and mice, so it is quite impressive. I see we've got one of our sneaky crocodiles there. Definitely looking quite well camouflaged. At first glance I did think it was a log. I'm sure for Halloween this crocodile went as a log, and I think it would have definitely won the costume party. But yeah, this crocodile's having a lazy Sunday like the rest of us are trying to. Well, I hope most of us are having a lazy Sunday. Hi Canine Girl, happy Sunday as well. I hear you, or it appears like you are also having wet and miserable weather. It seems like at least for Tau and Founders Lodge so far the weather's quite good there. I'm not enjoying the cooler windy weather we're having in the Lowveld at the moment. but at least it brought a little bit of rain this morning. Not much, but every little bit helps the bush a bit. It has been quite nice though with the rain as it's set in the area. A lot of the migrating cuckoo species are back and calling, so it's nice to see them in their bright colours. They look like flying jewels of the bush sometimes. Spaz Yenakov was asking, have I seen crocodiles catching small animals before? So I've never seen a crocodile catch an animal myself. I've seen one very nearly catch an impala. It was incredibly close. I think the challenge when it comes to seeing a crocodile catch something, you need to really be focusing on a specific point, because generally in those moments, there's the word I was looking for, in those moments they're very hidden and they're waiting to ambush. So unless it's a very small pool in which you've got a good field of view to focus on, it's quite easy to miss it, because in a larger body of water you'll actually just see the you'll just hear or see the splash and it's over in a second. But once in the Kruger, there was impala drinking from a small waterhole at the end of the dry season, and all of a sudden the impala disappeared and there was an explosion of a crocodile coming out. But yeah, it's quite a rapid attack, I would say, or kill maybe, but I think actually any predator kill in the bush is very rapid and unexpected, so you just have to try to be as awake as possible. Oh, there are crocodiles moving a bit. It's going to find a new sunbed or sun tanning spot. It's really doubling down on its log disguise by climbing underneath a tree. But all the other animals don't seem too phased. They've definitely got the advantage for once. Patrick was asking if crocodiles eat anything that is alive and do they catch fish as well. Patrick, yes, crocodiles will go for anything and everything. They will catch birds, small animals. I mean, I think we've spoken about it previously, but they've been known to catch little quelea birds in the Buteti region of Botswana. But yeah, essentially any large antelope is fair game. They are incredibly strong animals. And yeah, they'll go for fish. Anything that's actually an option is on the cards for them. I've seen footage of them attacking elephants, even though there's no hope that they could ever bring down an elephant. But maybe a baby elephant. But yeah, there's a lot of footage on the internet of them grabbing elephants' trunks or tails. Buffalo don't seem to show much fear of crocodiles in general. You often see them in swampy or marshy habitats, bathing quite deeply in the water, and they don't seem to be too concerned about being attacked by a crocodile. I do think maybe a very large crocodile could certainly overpower buffalo, but it's not something I've ever really come across or noticed. There's a park on the east coast of South Africa called Isimangaliso Wetland Park, and very beautiful park, but it's dominated by wetlands and marshes, etc. And there are quite a few crocodiles there, but the buffalo don't seem to be too concerned about swimming in the water there. Could almost also say the same for the waterbuck. They don't seem to be too concerned, but a waterbuck is definitely on the crocodile's menu. Well, we're gonna change our scenery a bit and hop over to the Serengeti. that's quite a cool sighting. We've got some baboons that have come for a swimming day here at Serengeti Explorer. I think this will get rather entertaining, that's for sure. Of course, the little ones are the most excited to play around in the water. We'll see if they maybe jump around a bit in the water. Quinn, you'd like to know if all mammals can swim? Quinn, yeah, as far as I'm sure, all mammals have the ability to swim. The question is more to the degree of which some of them can swim and others kind of float, or if it's really a last, I'd say maybe a move of desperation or last bit effort to escape predators, or a last resort. But yeah, all mammals can swim. Others swim better than others. This baboon is certainly showing us that he's more than a capable swimmer, having a grand old time there. Very entertaining. Yeah, I can't really think of an animal that can't or mammal, excuse me, that can't necessarily swim. They all definitely have the ability. Ironically enough, hippos don't really swim. I know we always associate them with being in the water and it looks like they're swimming. They just spend most of the time either standing in shallow water or on their back legs, and that's why we only see their heads sticking out. And when they move around, they run along the base or the bottom of the water body. If they needed to, I'm sure they could essentially swim, but that's actually not how they move around in water. And it's also for that reason why you don't often see hippos in very deep water. They are often in the shallow or deep enough water that suits their needs, but they'll never be in a very deep section of water. I did see some footage the other day of hippos in the sea. I've seen it in a couple places, but this was quite recent. It was also on the East Coast. And yeah, the hippos were swimming in a spot where snorkelers were normally looking at fish. But yeah, it shows you how adaptive animals are. Anyway, we're gonna hop over to Tembe and see what's waiting for us there. Looks like we have a meeting of some woolly neck storks. Looks to be about 4 or so birds there. Looks a bit more overcast in Tembe, a little bit of a breeze blowing. So the woolly neck storks are just taking things easy. There we have a nice close-up of our resting storks. A few of them just preening themselves. Almost all of them actually preening themselves. Also saw for a second we had a sandpiper in the bottom of the frame there, doing its thing along the shoreline. Of course, sandpipers are never easy to identify at the best of times. Hi Wendy, good to have you on the show. Hope it's a session filled with sightings for all of us. So far it's been quite great. I see a couple of comments about the beauty of these storks. They certainly are very striking. I think almost all the stork species are quite beautiful. Maybe except for the marabou stork. It's pretty in its own way, but they are quite ugly at the end of the day, unfortunately. So a question from Recycled Teenager. You're asking if there are wolves on the reserves. So the simple answer is no. There are no wolves essentially in Africa. Of course we have the African wild dog, that's also known as the painted wolf now. But there's obviously quite big differences between a African wild dog or painted wolf compared to your conventional wolves. Wild dogs tend to be quite a bit more quiet and mute. They don't howl, etc. And yeah, they're just quite worlds apart in my view. The only real true wolf in Africa would be the Ethiopian wolf, and I cannot comment much on them because I've never seen one. They are quite threatened and endangered. But yeah, Africa does not really essentially have any wolves. So if you do see one, it's either someone's escaped Alsatian or yeah, it shouldn't be there. We're going to go over to Moela and see what's waiting for us there. Things are a bit quiet for now at Tembe. Well, it does look like it's starting to green up quite rapidly here at Moela. Obviously the rains have been falling. And you can see this carpet of green that's starting to pop up. It is quite beautiful. Really contrast against the drab background and the grey elephant. Something I was thinking of, so there's another animal called an aardwolf, but that's also a bit of a strange name because they're not necessarily at all a wolf. They're part of the hyena family or group, and yeah, I think that name more stems from the old Dutch settlers that arrived in Africa, because also in parts of Namibia the brown hyena is known as the strandwolf or the beach wolf. But once again, it's not accurate, and that's an example of why common names can be quite misleading. The connotations are not necessarily accurate that they cause. And this Ellie is certainly having a peaceful drink on this Sunday. Just love how all this greenery is popping up. It really starts to make everything so beautiful. Certainly a very peaceful and quiet scene here at Moela. The elephant's just orienting himself a bit and just getting a bit of water in. Too much else going on. So there was a question coming through, why do elephants hear earthquakes with their feet almost 20 minutes before we feel them? So the simple answer is elephants can detect earthquakes before humans because they hear seismic vibrations through the ground. We were discussing earlier, elephants communicate with, they listen and communicate through their feet and trunks, etc. So those seismic vibrations are picked up quite quickly by them, and they are able to detect them long before we feel the first effects of it. Now we can see our elephant's now moved over a bit. He's done drinking. He's moved over to one of his more favorite mud puddles or depressions there, and he is certainly going to town, really stirring that mud up so he can get a good coating on himself. Really splashing that mud around. I'd be interested to know how much it's rained in this region the last while, but if these little pans and puddles are full, it must have been a convincing storm that's come through, which is only good for the bush. You can quite clearly see this bull has only got one tusk. He's clearly broken his other one. Nonetheless, a big, magnificent animal. Might have small tusks, but he's quite large. Seems like he's also relatively done with his mud bath now. He's on his way to, I'm sure, find some more food or socialize. It's in a way almost majestic as the elephant slowly walks straight towards the camera. It looks almost in slow-mo, but it's amazing how he just starts to get bigger and bigger as he approaches. But almost like a slow motion effect. Melanistic Marble speaking about how I enjoy seeing how animals react to vehicles. I may have missed the vehicle, but yeah, it's interesting. Just elephants, for example, in certain preserves or national parks where they've gotten used to vehicles and realize humans don't pose a threat, neither do the vehicles. It allows for very peaceful viewing, whereas other parts that have either had civil wars or poaching issues, the elephants tend to be a bit more aggressive. But it is stunning once that they get used to it and they realize they're in no danger in any way. Then one can truly enjoy and cherish the time you get to spend with large animals like elephants. It's also interesting, I know some people sometimes get a bit cautious or scared when they approach a buffalo herd by vehicles, but I must say for the most part buffalo are always very docile towards cars. Often a herd will just walk around a vehicle, they're not concerned. In some odd cases you might get a very grumpy old buffalo bull that might charge your car, but that's few and far between. And in some cases what happens is often if lions are chasing them and they kind of just scatter, they'll just run through anything and everything. So that does also take place sometimes, but that's also the importance of not being in the way or interfering with the animals when you're observing them. That's part and parcel of the whole process. As an observer, you shouldn't negatively influence or affect the sighting in any way. Canine girl asking, since elephants can sense stuff with their trunk and feet, will they sense things like ground nesting birds and their eggs? So I don't think they necessarily sense it just from a sensing thing from sound, or I mean, I think it's more than an elephant can more than likely by accident step on a bird's eggs or a bird if it doesn't move out of the way. Their feet and trunk are designed to pick up those vibrations, etc. But I'm sure they would hear or also smell the noise from the birds if they were trying to dissuade the elephants from moving through there. Just apologies, we moved from that camera. We were just struggling with the focusing of it at Moela, so we've come over to Timber Plains to enjoy our bee eaters.
What does it take to handle the wild? Balance. Determination. Focus.
Yaku.
And gear that can take a beating so you don't have to.
Oh, she's gonna catch it.
Come on, Tommy. Watch this, we're about to see a kill. You can see how close he is from where I am.
Every month, something wild lands in your inbox. From rare sightings and behind-the-scenes secrets to expert stories, seasonal changes, and exclusive travel opportunities, the Wild Earth Journal is your free monthly mailer, packed with the magic of the wild straight from the field. It's fun, it's free, it's full of surprises. Sign up now on the Wild Earth website.
Wes, you'd like to know, where do bee-eaters get their name from? Ironically enough, it's as simple as it sounds. They get their name from the fact that they eat bees, among other things. They'll also eat wasps and other flying insects. But, yeah, they simply... I'm not sure specifically who gave them that name, why or how, but they are very proficient bee catchers. Question from David Bilston. Hi Kenneth, have you had any experience with tigerfish? David, I have. Not in a long time, but in my youth we did some family trips up to the Zambezi River and the Okavango Delta, where we did catch some tigerfish. There are a few rivers near the Kruger and in KZN, or the eastern side of South Africa, that do have tigerfish. I'm certainly not a very good fisherman, but I do really enjoy tigerfish. I think they're very exciting and very cool fish, for all intensive purposes, essentially Africa's piranha. Of course, the river here by Tembo Plains is the Zambezi River itself, so there's plenty of tigerfish here. It would be quite a spectacle if we maybe saw one grab something. But they are quite stealthy like that. They don't often splash around or jump out. But very proficient predatory fish and very impressive fish, to say the least. I know in some parts of South Africa there's two known spots. There's one on the Zimbabwe-Botswana confluence with South Africa. There's a dam there where the tigerfish have learned how to catch swallows. I see our beaters are about all over the show. We're gonna head over back to Tower Lodge. Well, still a very vibrant scene today at Tower Lodge. A few more ellies and waterbuck and plenty of waterfowl. What I wanted to finish off saying on those tigerfish, and then there's also a dam near the southern boundary of the Kruger Park where the tigerfish have also learned to catch swallows that come swoop in for a drink of water. Just very interesting how these fish learn that behavior, but I think it just speaks volumes of the hunting prowess of tigerfish. Robin Mack, welcome. Great to have you here. Hope you're having a wonderful Sunday that side. It's interesting to see how these waterbuck are so up to their shoulders, or almost waded quite deeply into the grass and water here. It looks quite shallow from the outset, but it shows you how it's almost a floating mat of grass in general. I'm just surprised they don't get attacked more often by the crocodiles. I guess it's obviously also quite muddy, and the water itself is actually not so deep, so there's nowhere really for the crocodiles to hide, and it's more the waterbuck sinking in the mud, but nonetheless very interesting. these waterbuck are just mowing and cropping the grass quite peacefully. An example of them being able to exploit this niche that other grazers are not necessarily adapted to do. Due to their affinity for water and their ability to swim, they're quite well adapted to wade in and get hold of this wonderful green grass. I know sometimes we see the elephants at Tau also wading in to eat some of this green grass. But yeah, for example, the impalas, wildebeest or zebra would not be able to make use of this resource. Koala Joe. I do agree. Koala Joe, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, excuse me, but yeah, it certainly is quite a beautiful scene with all these animals in one shot. Plenty of impala, some elephants doing some yoga at the back there, and of course the waterbuck just doing their thing. Looks like there's actually an Egyptian goose mother, or parent for that matter, with some goslings there. Also, it seems like they're pecking on some of the grass right by the waterbuck. David, yeah, it certainly would be quite cool if we ever saw a tigerfish on Wild Earth. It'd be quite cool if we ever got maybe a underwater cam in one of the African rivers. You could actually see a bit of aquatic life and what goes down there. I know on some of the trips we did, there were some of the lodges had freshwater tanks, and they had kind of all the fish species that you get, and often they would have a small tigerfish or two. Also, some of the Kruger rest camps have got deep ponds with various species of native and indigenous fish, and it's always very cool to see them because it's not necessarily something you have the opportunity to just see. Kelly with quite an interesting question. What's the wild secret behind waterbuck's meat bad taste myth? So yeah, it's quite an interesting story that's done the rounds for ages. It's an old hunter's tale and many different facets on it. I've seen people, in the stories of if you ever have waterbuck meat, it must be carefully handled because it's the hair that causes the bad taste, and the hair must be kept off. And then I've also seen and watched videos where people have deliberately had the meat come into contact with the hair, etc., and apparently they've done taste tests and there's no difference, and apparently certain predators avoid waterbuck. I think it's a lot of old wife tales. I think apparently the verdict is it comes down to the waterproofing greasy hair that waterbuck have, and if that comes into contact with the meat, that's what causes the bad taste. But if it's handled carefully and cleanly, it shouldn't have an effect. But yeah, also for that reason of that predators avoiding waterbuck, that also hasn't really been scientifically proven at all. Lions or leopards or hyenas will readily, even wild dogs for that matter, will try bring down a waterbuck if they can. And yeah, I mean, if you think of it, saying that they won't go for the meat due to the bad taste, but I've seen plenty of hyenas, leopards or lions scavenging on very rotten old carcasses, and that doesn't seem to deter them either. So I don't think there might be a slight effect, but I don't think I think it's negligible at best. Mr. Elemental, you are 100% correct. There was some, not necessarily, well, I know we've discussed this topic. Essentially, Egyptian geese are in the shell duck family, but yes, I did see some small chicks there. They were plodding around in the grasses with their parent. See, I started a bit of a cool idea there, or a bit of a movement on the underwater cameras. Yeah, it would certainly be interesting. I can only fathom the technicalities that maybe come with it. Maintaining a underwater live feed camera probably comes with its own challenges, and I think especially so in a underwater environment in Africa where you've got crocodiles and hippos and elephants. But I think it could certainly give a interesting perspective. When I was younger, I also had a few tropical fish tanks, and I loved keeping the different types of African tropical African fish that were out there. But yeah, I think watching a fish tank is always very therapeutic, so it could certainly be cool to see some of the different fish species. I think it would definitely have to be set up in one of the riverine or one of the large African rivers where the visibility is also quite good. Somewhere like the Okavango Delta is probably a good location. I think if you put it in any other general water source, you'd probably just see catfish, and the visibility would be quite poor. And there was a question regarding if the animals get stuck in the muddy water. I've not come across one here at Tau. I think the sides around Tau are quite solid, so there's not often animals getting stuck. Occasionally, I do remember quite some time ago, there was some water buck that looked like they got a bit stuck in the water, but obviously they're a bit more adapted, or didn't get stuck in the water, they got stuck in the mud, but I do think they got out. That being said, with the crocodiles around, I think any animal that does get stuck, it's a bit of a death sentence. The crocodiles will devour it or take advantage of that opportunity. Wow, we've got quite a large breeding herd of elephants that's now come in to drink. From quite large and old to very small and young elephants coming in. Quite a beautiful setting with all these large elephants slowly stumbling in. I'm sure they are quite excited for a drink and a splash. This breeding herd is moving with purpose and quite closely, protectively moving together as well. All the calves seem to be on the inside of the herd there. I do think the females get a little bit antsy at the presence of some of the younger or the older bulls. Obviously, if things get a bit out of hand, the younger animals can be injured or squished. But everything still looks relatively calm for now. I must say this is quite a sizable herd. I know we often see breeding herds at Taal, but this one's just seems a bit more larger than we often see them in. It's nice to see so many elephants of different ages and sizes moving together. It's got a certain majesty around it, and it seems very graceful and beautiful seeing them all move together in unison. Penelope mentioning that she's saving her pennies to go to Taal. I can only agree with you. It is certainly beautiful, and I think it is definitely well worth the pennies that need to be saved. It is a very unique habitat. The closest I've been to Madikwe was Pilansberg, and even then kind of similar, but yeah, not the same. It is certainly a very unique reserve. Maybe one day, when the planets align, I'll also be able to go there. But it's certainly quite stunning. Bushman B asking if there's a reason why there's not necessarily any warthogs around. It could have, I don't know necessarily about Taal for that reason, or Madikwe. It could be due to the fact that there's quite a prominent lion population. Generally, when there's quite a few lions in an area, warthogs and other predators for that matter, but lions and leopards are big, and hyenas put a lot of pressure on warthogs. So that could be a reason why we don't necessarily see warthogs at Taal. Could also have to do with the harder ground in the area. If they struggle to dig burrows, they're not necessarily safe. Of course they can use burrows from aardvarks, etc. But I think predation would be the bigger reason. And yeah, lastly, that this might be in a section where we're not really seeing them, but I think predation could play a role. Kathleen, you were asking if a crocodile bit off an elephant's trunk, would that be a death sentence for the elephant? Kathleen, no, I don't think so. It depends where it bites off the trunk, but I think, look, I don't think it would necessarily be able to just rip off a chunk of it. It can happen, but why I say no, I don't think it would be an issue. Some elephants get their trunks stuck in snares, and we often see these elephants still, and due to that they lose a section of their trunk, of course. But we see these elephants growing into mature individuals and still coping. Obviously it is a bit of a disability not having the prehensile tip of your trunk or your whole trunk, but it's not a death sentence. So I also don't think a crocodile maybe ripping off or damaging a bit of the trunk would be an issue for them. But I must say that crocodile's in for quite a beating if it grabs the elephant's trunk. Normally their first reaction is to try stab it with their tusks or push their head against it, so it's not exactly a great idea for a crocodile to grab an elephant's trunk.
My name is Amy, and behind the camera with me is Paul. And I mean, to be able to share it with all of you. Fingers crossed, and I'll make sure I wear my lucky leopard socks as well.
What does it take to handle the wild? Balance. Determination. Focus.
Yaku!
And gear that can take a beating so you don't have to.
And that's it for this morning's drive.
She's just got her impala, everybody.
And we're going to be heading out and seeing what animals we can find.
Out here, every wild moment counts, and as a Wild Earth explorer, you will not miss out. Watch the Wild Earth channel ad-free 24/7, and you can even rewind if you have missed out on something. Enjoy the behind-the-scenes video clips as well as fireside chat, or get the early offers on our travel experiences. It's the best way to stay connected and be part of the Wild Earth family.
Lions in the area, and they're just a bit on edge or careful, but it's always amazing to see how much care elephants place in looking after their young. Well, we're gonna leave our Ellies alone to carry on with their mud bath, and we're going over to Lentoria. We've got some very entertaining primates waiting for us here. I see there was a few dirty looks going on around. And see if the theatrics play out. Quite strange, as quickly as they appeared, they disappeared. Well, we've still got one left, but yeah, anyway, with that in mind, we're going to go over to Founder's Lodge for a bit of action there. Here we've got a few warthogs, the miniature rhinos at work. Looks like they're having a good mud bath. I think these warthogs maybe have a bit of an easier life. Probably not a huge lion population that puts too much pressure on them. I know when we go to the Kruger Park, we normally get quite excited if we see warthogs. You don't often come across them. It's not easy being a piggy in the African bush. It's quite a tough life. And quite cute how these two young warthogs are having a good scratch on the rock. They're really getting stuck in there just to get rid of any parasites or itches that they've haven't been able to deal with for a while. Neil with a question, do you get baboons that are born blind? Neil, I'm sure it happens from time to time. I'm not sure how often it takes place. I've never seen it myself or really heard of it. I think obviously in that situation it would be quite a struggle for that baboon, but they do have the, I'd say, the added benefit of living in quite a large social group, so there is quite a bit of care and protection for that individual. How long it would survive, I don't think too long. Obviously while it's a baby and it'll be quite looked after, I think it would eventually become quite an easy target for a predator like a leopard. Leopards tend to hunt baboons quite a bit, and I'm sure being blind in the African bush is a bit of a death sentence, so maybe at a loss of awareness it would eventually be picked off before much of the troop could maybe intervene or do something to save it, just because it wouldn't be able to avoid or see the danger coming. But yeah, it's nothing I've necessarily seen. I have seen baboons missing limbs sometimes, and they get on quite well, and obviously that's due to the ability, or the reason that they're not truly incapacitated or disabled, and they do have a bit of protection from the rest of the group. But yeah, I don't think being blind is a very good thing to have happen to you in the bush. I have seen a leopard that's partially blind in one eye, or sometimes you see it in other cats, but that doesn't seem to affect them as long as they maintain vision in one of the eyes at least. But yeah, I think if you went completely blind it would be quite a bit of a problem. We've got a nice close-up of this blessed buck here. I don't know what he's necessarily doing now. He seems to be frozen like a statue, and had a quick sip of water, and he's going off to nod his head further. And the warthog is still having a very nice spa day in the mud there. I was going to say that it looked like that blessbok was playing a bit of hide and seek with us, hiding his head behind the tree. I think he's actually just trying to keep his face out of the sun a bit, to be honest. But they are quite comical animals. They do look rather graceful and pretty, but sometimes they can be real clowns and just run around in circles or not really do things of that make sense necessarily. I know sometimes some smaller reserves will keep a herd of blessbok. They are not the best when it comes to detecting predators, so they act as a bit of a buffer that some of the other more valuable or rarer antelope species are maybe spared from predation. For all intensive purposes, yeah, blessbok are not too wild. In some parts of South Africa they actually keep them alongside cattle. They're quite easy to keep animals. Wildlife lady, yeah, I definitely agree. The warthogs are having a wonderful Sunday spa day. I'm always jealous of them because they're probably one of the few animals that can get so muddy but still look fabulous. Generally when us humans do it, we're not very attractive after a mud bath. And when we do a mud bath, normally it's quite an expensive spa treatment, so warthogs have definitely got the good life going over there. It's quite entertaining just watching these warthogs. They seem to be scratching themselves on every and any surface they can get hold of around the mud hole or the water hole. This one's really getting a good scratch on its bum there. I can imagine there was a bit of a hard to reach itch. I think some of these objects have been artificially placed for the benefits of the rhinos. I think we've lost a bit of view of our warthogs. We're going to go back over to Tau and see what's going on there. Just some more elephant action. Seems like everyone's had a good mud bath. Everyone's looking a bit relaxed and peaceful. I'm sure they're slowly making their way back into the bush there to continue feeding. I'd imagine they're probably going to rest for a bit before carrying on. I'm sure it's quite hot at the moment in Madikwe. Interesting question from Elizabeth Sanders. Do leopards regurgitate fur balls like a domestic cat? Yes, they do. So I've actually seen one or seen it once or twice on walks in the bush. Sometimes you'll come along to a spot where it's a big chunk of hair that's been regurgitated into a bit of a ball or tapered shape. But yeah, it's what comes to mind is obviously it's not your regular house cat. It's obviously quite a large cat, but I think it's, aside from them licking themselves, it's also from a lot of the fur that gets ingested and when they catch their prey. Often when you see a leopard that's caught or made a kill or caught an antelope, you'll see it almost licks or cleans the area of hair that it can eat. So they do try to avoid any hair that or while they're eating, but does inadvertently get into their digestive tract, and hence why they regurgitate it. But yeah, it's always quite an interesting thing to come across in the bush. You almost look twice at it. And the elephants are slowly melting off now into the bush there. It's quite interesting. It's compared to how they walked around the waterhole, much more looser and almost protective circle that formed around the youngsters. One would almost say this is more their feeding behavior that they're doing now as they spread off to feed in the general vicinity of one another, but all just dispersing a bit to feed on different shrubs and grasses and trees. But certainly indicates that they're quite relaxed and happy. And the poor wildebeest are just having to get out of the way a bit. and make space for the bigger animals of the bush. This bull elephant is taking a very peaceful dip there in the mud. Almost looks like he's listening a bit, but his trunk kind of flat on the mud there, which is normally indicative of them listening to communications and grumbles. I've never really seen them do it in mud or water. Or he's just a bit heartbroken that all the females have left him on his own. And he's a bit sad. I'm sure the elephants are anxiously awaiting the return of the grass growth once the rains have really kicked into second gear. Predominantly in the wet season, elephants shift a lot of their diet over to grass. It's more in the winter season that they feed on trees and foliage, just due to the fact that the grasses lose a lot of the nutritional value in the dry season. And I know people often associate elephants with being browsers and tree eaters, but given the chance, they definitely graze quite happily, and they tend to quite a bit in the wet season when the grass is plentiful and lush. It's also interesting, you'll actually see it quite often deep in the winter when trees start to transfer a lot of the nutrients down into their roots. Elephants will dig the roots up or uproot small shrubs just to get to the roots that they can feed on them. Amazing how they are able to learn that behavior. I wonder if it's that they kind of smell the water accumulation down there, or what it is that they are able to detect, but it's very evident when you're in the bush in the dry season. Of course, a few lone wildebeest coming down for a drink now. If I was them, I'd recommend they went to the other side of the waterhole. I think this water would prove to be quite muddy at the moment, but beggars can't be choosers. I don't think they've also got the ability to utilize all the different water sources elephants can with their trunks. So I think for them what's more important is a safe spot to drink where a crocodile's not about to jump out and grab them. Shame that wildebeest got a bit of a fright when that bull elephant flicked his trunk out. I think he was already on edge to begin with. It's funny how elephants can be a bit cheeky like that. They know they can throw their weight around with some of the smaller residents of the bush. Seems like our bull elephant's done with his mental break, and he's also applying a decent coating of mud to himself. think it was quite in line with he was clearly listening or communicating a bit, maybe with some of the cows on the area, or listening. But he seems quite focused now on having a good mud bath. Well, things are quietening down here. We're going to go over to Tembo Plains again. Our resident bee eaters hard at work, catching a few bees. It's quite a pretty perch that they've got there. I do wonder when they'll be returning to my neck of the woods. I'm quite excited to see them again. It feels almost like a lifetime since they were down in this area, the Greater Kruger. But I will make sure I relish it quite a bit. It's interesting to note in some parts of the Kruger, I think also maybe the Caprivi or the Okavango, but the carmine bee eaters will associate around Kori bustards, and as the Kori bustard moves through open areas, they'll basically hitch a ride on the back of the Kori bustard, and while it's walking it will inadvertently flush insects, and then the bee eaters will fly and swoop around the Kori bustard, catching these flushed insects. I think I've seen it once or twice, but I can't remember it clearly, so it frustrates me a bit. I would like to see it again, so every time we are in the region of summer and we see a Kori bustard, we always excitedly look out for the bee eaters that may hitch a ride. It's quite an interesting phenomenon to see. I know it's also quite a sought after picture by many photographers. Obviously the bright crimson colours hitching a ride on the Kori bustard is quite unique. For anyone joining or curious to know what is this colourful bird, this is the southern carmine bee eater, one of the many different bee eater species in Africa, but yeah, this is specifically the southern carmine bee eater. It's quite a pretty and graceful bird, as are many of the bee eaters. They're all quite pretty and well coloured. Neil with a question asking what's the difference between an African elephant and an Asian elephant. Obviously we don't see Asian elephants on the show, but just in short, essentially it comes down to size. African elephants are much larger than Asian elephants. They've got larger ears. Another thing that's actually also quite prominent is African elephants have two trunk tips, or trunk fingers if you like to call them that, the prehensile tips, whereas your Asian elephant is smaller, got much more of a rounded dome-headed shaped head compared to the larger squarish head of an African elephant. But and they only have one prehensile tip. Also just their habitats, your Asian elephants live in forests and jungles, and your African elephants live on open savannas. Of course there is the African forest elephant, and even then that one is also quite unique and different to the African savanna elephant. Maybe it's got a few more similarities with the Asian elephant, but even then they also look quite different. For a second I got quite excited. I thought the bee eater had come in with something in its mouth and we were going to see it try to remove the stinger, but alas, not this time. I'm sure eventually our patience will pay off. But they are certainly having quite a peaceful Sunday perch. I think on Friday when we saw them we got up to 6 or 8 different bee eaters, and I'm sure the rest are also quite nearby, just during different degrees of activity when they decide to roost a bit or rest. And then there was 2. I know also at the start of the show we had also 2 white-fronted bee eaters that joined in. It's interesting to note, so the carmine bee eaters are migratory, whereas those white-fronted bee eaters we saw, they are found year-round in their habitats. And now we are down to 1, but I'm sure they'll all rapidly return as quickly as they disappear. I hope they don't disappear. I'm enjoying watching them at the moment. It'll be a bit quiet, just staring at a tree waiting for them to come back. But it is quite nice when you find a spot where the bee eaters are zooming around. It would be quite cool if we could also get a little bee eater to come past, and if we had 3 different bee eater species in one tree, that would be a nice trifecta. But I think that's maybe a bit of a big ask. It doesn't often happen. Also their habitat requirements are a bit different compared to their larger cousins. And it's quite nice with that zoomed out view. You've got a bit more perspective of what's going on around there. Very pretty along the Zambezi River. You can see a few of the bee eaters swooping around in the background there. Ben would like to know, do all bee eaters do they all hawk insects? Yeah, so that is quite normal for them. A lot of other birds also hawk insects, but that is the bee eater's hunting strategy. They will perch and watch, but they are quite graceful and agile in flight, so it is quite easy for them to hawk insects like that. Compared to the European bee eater, they tend to fly quite a bit higher, and you don't often see them just perching. They tend to hunt quite a bit on the wing from quite a higher altitude compared to the carmine bee eaters that we're watching. I see there's a few comments also coming in about female Asian elephants not having tusks. That's 100% correct. That gene does pop up a bit in African elephants. It's not too prevalent, but certain populations that have negatively been affected by poaching by humans, which would have caused artificial natural selection essentially. It can cause that gene to become quite prevalent, and in some places there's elephants with or female elephants that also become tuskless essentially. It was a bit common in the Eastern Cape with the adder elephants, but they have reintroduced a few Kruger elephants just to strengthen that bloodline.
This unfolds in front of you.
What does it take to handle the wild? Balance. Determination. Focus.
Yaku!
And gear that can take a beating so you don't have to.
Every week, the wilderness delivers.
And that's why we're here.
Drama, chaos, crimes, humour. All moments you'll never forget. We've counted them down, argued about them, and finally picked the very best. From rare sightings to classic bush showdowns, this is nature's weekly highlight reel. Sharp facts, bad jokes, and the wildest top 5 you'll see this side of the savannah. It's not just a show, it's a wild bush week.
Out here, every moment counts. As a Wild Earth explorer, you won't miss a thing. Watch the Wild Earth channel ad-free 24/7 and rewind if you want to catch something again. Enjoy behind-the-scenes videos, fireside chats, and early access to travel offers. It's the best way to stay connected and be part of the Wild Earth family.
Be quite detrimental to the animals that rely on the water for drinking. Certainly a very peaceful scene today. I think quite in line with a nice relaxing Sunday. Just from my side, I'd like to say thanks to everyone for joining in, and thanks for the great questions. It was a very insightful and enjoyable session. Maybe a little quieter on the weather front, but at least Tal was definitely very generous with all its sightings and activities for us today. It certainly kept us busy, and so many different and interesting things here to enjoy at Tal. There's quite a nice waterhole after all.